Well, probably much better than what it was in the 1970s. I think a lot of the problems are being attacked. We see it from Forum Balticum. We see it from the Baltic Sea Action Group, many other organizations and institutions that are working. When I was a kid and we used to sail around in the archipelago, I was able to see about 5 to 10 meters down to the bottom. Then because of the phosphates and others, it became a green sea, quite a nasty and gunky sea. But now suddenly again, when you can't see the bottom, people are starting to work around it, and I think we are cleaning up the Baltic Sea.
It's a well-populated area, and on top of that, if you look at it as a growth base, it actually looks pretty good. The Baltic states as such, of course, are our champs of growth. At the moment, Germany is very solid. Poland was one of the few countries that did not go into a recession during the worst part of the financial crisis. Finland has remained and retained its position as a AAA country, and of course Sweden and Denmark have been dynamic throughout. So when I travel the world with trade or other issues, I often point out that the Baltic Sea is actually the place to be. If you look at competitive indexes, we're all up there, so we guys are actually doing quite well. So the Baltic Sea as such, I think point number one, is quite easy to brand and argue for as a growth base. The second point I wanted to make is the Baltic Sea as a success story. I remember when we were working on the Baltic Sea strategy, we always talked about the Baltic Sea being very frail and fragile. The average depth of the Baltic Sea, as you all know, is no more than approximately 50 meters. On top of that, the circulation of a drop of water in and out from the Baltic Sea is very slow. Just 3% goes out, 3% comes in. That means an annual circulation of approximately 30 years. Now, I as a politician don't often make a claim to fame, or at least I try to avoid it. But there's one thing that I am at least moderately proud of in my political career, and that is when I became an MEP in 2004, I started to push for something that later was branded as the Baltic Sea Strategy. Did I do it alone? Absolutely not. We initiated it together from a Baltic Sea Action Group with, of course, MEPs from the Baltic Sea region, and the final report had the names of Thomas Hendrik Ilves, the current president of Estonia, and yours truly. We felt that this was one of the kickoffs for greater awareness of the Baltic Sea region, and indeed I would argue that perhaps part of the Baltic Sea Days that we are having here have their epistemology in that report. The final and third point I wanted to make is to have a look at the so-called 10 commandments of the Baltic Sea Strategy that we pushed forward in 2006-2007, and just a quick checklist on whether they materialized or not. How many minutes have I spoken?
4.
4. Here it is, in 1 minute, the 10 commandments of the Baltic Sea. 1, the Commission should make an initiative on the Baltic Sea Strategy. They did, and this is actually the first time that the European Parliament has actually gotten the Commission to do an initiative for them. Number 2, once a year we should have a summit meeting of Prime Ministers and Presidents around the Baltic Sea. Well, at the moment it's a little bit challenging, but don't worry, we'll end up having them, and we're already doing that. Number 3, there should be an own budget line for the Baltic Sea Strategy. That indeed exists. Number 4, all programs should take horizontally environmental protection into consideration. I think we're doing that at least partially. Number 5, we should have protective areas in the Baltic Sea. I think we could improve on that. Number 6, we should improve the energy cooperation between Baltic Sea countries, and I think we're doing that. The Baltic Connector is one example. The possible joint LNG terminal between Estonia and Finland is another one. Number 7, we should have a sea highway on the Baltic Sea. We are doing that. Number 8, we should focus on research centers and student exchange. We are working on that. Number 9, we should work on traffic networks and improving them all around the region. I think we're doing that, and we did it in the financial framework 214-220. And number 10, we should have more cooperation on border crossings in the region. of course visa liberalization being one of them. So this is, ladies and gentlemen, what I wanted to say in my 10 minutes. Number one, I think this is a great growth area. Number two, I think it's a good success story which we should be proud of and promote around the world. And number three, many of the 10 commandments that we put down in the Baltic Sea Strategy have materialized. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's very difficult to say because the Baltic Sea Strategy at the end of the day then became a whole bunch of smaller projects. Some of the projects have worked out, some haven't. I personally think that there were perhaps a few too many strategies around the strategy itself. But overall I think it's been a success. There's still probably more money that needs to be poured into the system. There needs to be more work on environmental protection, but general awareness is up and a lot of people are doing public-private partnerships, and I think that's good news.
Thank you.